So I'll just give it another minute.
You.
Okay, well, it's 4 minutes past. Oh, just as I say, that's a few people still wanting to come in. I'll wait till 5 minutes past. I think that's a good number to kind of make a start, if that's okay with our guest speakers. Just conscious of time as well, but I'll give it 1 more minute and then we will make a start. I'm sure people will be able to join as we're going through the slides. Okay, well, it's 5 minutes past. I think it's fair to say let's try and make a start. Just conscious it is in the evening as well. For those of you that don't know me, I am Rajshri Owen. I'm the Chief Officer for Community Pharmacy, Leicestershire and Rutland. Great to have some of you, well, all of you here, obviously, this evening, and appreciate you taking your time out of your evening, stroke family time as well. So generally appreciate that. So this is, if it's your first time joining our open house surgery, we do this every month. And it occurs on the third Wednesday of every month. And really, it's an opportunity for anybody working within community pharmacy, contractors, pharmacists, reliefs, locums, technicians, pharmacy managers, etc., to join our monthly call, and just learn a little bit about what's going on on a local, regional level, but also share some intelligence and insights in terms of what you want us to report back to the likes of Community Pharmacy England and other stakeholders that we work with on a regular basis as well, and just really allows us to keep our ear to the ground. So I've prepared a couple of slides. I'm going to move forward with them if that's okay, and then I will do some introductions as well as I go through the agenda in a few moments. So as always, please follow us on social media. We put a lot of information, not just on our website, but some different information that's not on our website, that's quite reactive and requiring immediate response, etc., but some local information as well that Kate, our administrator, will put on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. So please do feel free to like us, add us, share us, whatever you need to do. If you're not part of our WhatsApp group, it's our community pharmacy contractors. So again, open to contractors working within LLR. WhatsApp group allows you to share information, including today somebody was asking for stock, etc. But also we put a lot of information on there that may require an urgent response or immediate action as well. So if you're not part of that group, please feel free to add yourselves on, or if you're unable to, then just drop me a line, and my contact details are right there at the bottom, and I'll put them in the chat shortly as well. So what are we going to cover today? Just very quickly, we've got Sam, and I'm going to ask Sam to introduce herself shortly, and her team. Sam's here to talk to us about vaccinations, and she works on behalf of LLR ICB as well. We've also got Paul with us, who hopefully a lot of you already know. Paul is our community pharmacy clinical lead for LLR ICB, and he regularly joins our calls on a monthly update. And then it's over back to me. So just to provide you a quick synopsis in terms of what you need to know for the next coming weeks, and just provide you a quick LLR update with regards to what's going on in community pharmacy, and also what I need to report back to you as contractors. And then the final thing is just making sure that you've got that you're able to provide contractor feedback. Kate, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that we are recording this, so it will go online afterwards.
Thanks, Kate. That's really kind. Apologies, I didn't say that. That's fabulous. So Sam, can you just introduce yourself and your colleagues here? That would be fantastic if that's okay, and I'll just pop myself on mute.
Okay, thank you very much. So hello everybody, my name's Samantha Keating. I work as a project manager on the vaccination programme for LLR ICB. Generally, well, initially started off doing COVID and then flu, and then more recently we've picked up measles, and we're also picking up pertussis and everything else vaccination. So I've brought with me, Ginny, Dr. Virginia Ashman, my colleague. I'll let her introduce herself in a moment, works alongside me on the vaccination programme as our resident GP clinical lead, and she's going to be actually leading the presentation today. So I feel a bit of a fraud actually, because I'm on the agenda but I'm barely doing anything. But I brought along my friends.
That's brilliant.
Okay, Ginny.
Thank you. Ginny, do you want me to? Did you have some slides to share?
I have. Would that be okay if I
Of course it is. So if I just, of course, if I stop presenting, and then you'll be able to share your.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So hopefully, can you all see that? Measles.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for accommodating us tonight, all of you. We're really, really grateful. As you know, there's been an issue with measles in LLR over the last couple of months or so, and it's not really going away. And we've just felt it would be really useful, because you're all in the very centre of your communities, to make sure that you feel as up to speed as you possibly can on what's going on, and how you might interact with the public in terms of, knowing what to say, and generally being able to sort of signpost and so forth. So thank you very much for having us. So the first thing really is to just give you a snapshot of what measles is currently doing. So we get updates from the UK HSA on a regular basis, pretty much twice a week, something like that, 3 times a week. And this is what it looks like right now. So it shows that back at the end of last year, in weeks sort of 39 and 41, 42, 44, we had a little flurry of measles activity, but it was tiny. So just 1 or 2 cases, every week or so. And it all settled down, and we thought, oh gosh, we got away with it. Phew, thank goodness that's gone away. We'd better look at our MMR rates. But of course, since Christmas, there's been a real upsurge in cases of measles, mainly in the city. But there have been a scattering of cases in the county, and even 1 case in Rutland. So nobody's immune, as it were. Well, we wish everyone were immune, but you know what I mean. The greyed out area to the right of this histogram, those are the weeks where we don't know what will happen. We know that those bar chart histograms will go up higher, because cases will be reported and then added retrospectively in terms of when the onset of symptoms was. So we know that those are incomplete, but up until week 18 we have fairly complete data, and as you can see, we had a big boost up, and if anything, probably we're just holding our own now. Possibly numbers are going down a little, but none of us are expecting that this is the end of it. We think there's every chance measles will flurry up again. And so what we wanted to do was really just to give you really a little bit of an overview of measles. What is measles? Some of the symptoms and signs, the complications, the sort of infection timeline, the concept of herd immunity. vaccination, what's on offer at the moment, what to do if you or your staff or your friends or family are exposed to a case of measles, and the concept of self-isolation. And really the presentation we're giving you is very similar to the one we've done for, you know, all of the GPs in primary care also, but also to schools, to parents, to teachers, to all sorts of people. We're just wanting to raise everybody's awareness, but I think you're in a particularly powerful position to have positive influence on people. So first of all, just to say measles, the cause of it is the rubeola virus, not to be confused with rubella. Totally different virus, totally different illness, really. They happen to both be included in the MMR vaccine. But rubeola, similar sounding name, but that's the name of the virus that causes measles. In America, you tend to hear them talk about rubeola more than here. And it's incredibly infectious, and that's one of the key things we'll come on to. And basically, as an audience, and you and your families and everyone you know fall into two categories. Either you're immune or you're not immune. So to be immune, you either need to have been fully vaccinated with 2 doses of MMR. If you're lucky and you've only had 1 dose, you might just get away with it. You might be vaccinated enough just on 1 dose, but 2 doses really nails it. Or you may, like me, have had measles when you were a baby, because it was far more prevalent years ago. We didn't have vaccination for it when I was little, so everybody caught it, basically, and I was lucky enough to get away with it. People who are not immune, that's either that you've not been vaccinated at all, or perhaps you've only had 1 of your 2 jabs, so your vaccinations aren't completely up to speed, and you've not had measles previously to give you natural immunity. And you can see from the little baby's face on the left in particular, that sort of classic measly rash on the face, but it spreads down.
You've gone on mute, Ginny.
I'm so sorry, I have no idea. How long have I been on mute? Have you missed a lot? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Oh, I can.
No, we didn't miss a lot. It was just as you were describing the baby's face and explaining that it's very measly, and then you went on mute. Yeah, so
Very,
it's just
very strange. Can you still see the slide share?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, apologies for that. I have no idea. I didn't touch anything, so I don't quite know how I managed to do that, but let's hope it doesn't happen again. Please shout at me if it does. So yeah, classic measly rash, and it spreads down from the face to the trunk and limbs as well. Just to touch then on how infectious it is, I'm sure you remember back in COVID pandemic days on the TV, the government scientists kept on telling us, didn't they, about the R0, the natural R number, reproductive number of COVID. And they were explaining that without any masks or social distancing or any immunity and no vaccines, the natural reproductive number is how many cases would each case of COVID cause in a normal community environment. And for COVID, they worked out that it was somewhere between 2 and 3. So we'll call it 2.5. But of course, each case that causes 2.5 more cases, well, each of those will cause 2.5 more, and each of those causes 2.5 more. And as we saw in COVID, it exponentially gets bigger and bigger and creates a massive problem very, very quickly. With measles, the R0 is way, way bigger. It's more like somewhere between 14 and 18. They can't really work it out ever so accurately these days because there's so much immunity in the community because of natural disease and because of vaccination. And of course, you know, we're not in a situation where nobody's immune. As I say, there's loads of immunity. But if it were plopped into a community where there was no protection at all, it's massively, massively more contagious than COVID is. So really, really easy to catch. And this just demonstrates, first of all, that it's very similar to COVID, transmitted through coughs and sneezes, spray of droplets. Then you might touch the dirty surfaces, rub your eyes, or you might breathe them in through your nose or your mouth. So just the same kind of contact spread. And then in terms of that infectiousness, just imagine that one infectious little person on the right goes out to a tea party with 10 friends and none of them are immune, none of them have been vaccinated. We would expect 90%, so 9 out of those 10 friends would catch measles that day if that person was infectious with it. Just one lucky person might get away with it. So that just does make that point. Timeline, we think this is really useful information because it helps you protect yourself and your communities in terms of knowing what to expect when. So imagine these 2 children, Lara and Paul. Lara comes home from school feeling fine, but overnight develops symptoms, a bit of a temperature, maybe cough and cold symptoms, not feeling very well. Probably she gets dosed up with a bit of Calpol, doesn't she, and sent off to school. maybe day 2, she wakes up feeling worse, higher temperature, more cough and cold symptoms, feels pretty lousy. Well, she might get kept off school this day, or she might get dosed up again and go back to school for day 3. But possibly by day 3, day 4, she's feeling far too ill, and she's probably in bed by now, feeling really, really hot, really bothered, really not interested in food and drink. And of course, it's around day 4, about 4 days into the illness, bam, that rash will come out on her face. Everyone will go, oh, good grief, it was measles. And then the rash will spread down her body. And of course, once everyone realizes it's measles, at that point, generally, she'll stay off school and she'll no longer be in contact with anybody else. She will still be infectious from the time when her rash first comes out. She will be infectious for 4 entire days after that rash first shows itself. So even if there's a tail end of residual rash 5-6 days later, she won't be infectious by then. So it's possible to have very old end stages of the rash and to no longer be infectious. So it's 4 days after the rash first shows on the face. But if you look at the blue line, the infectious period, she has been infectious right from the very first moment she had her very first symptom. And of course, unbeknownst to him, her baby brother Paul caught measles from her across the breakfast table on that very first morning. And he has been quietly incubating it. You can see on there, on average, as an 11-day incubation period. He'll be completely symptom-free during that time, but he'll be incubating measles. And eventually, just probably as Lara's feeling better and gone back to school, bam, Paul will go down with his symptoms. And you can see it's just one family with 2 children who catch it one to the other. And it's nearly 3 weeks in total of disruption and children off school and all the rest of it. So it's incredibly disruptive. And in this situation, we're looking at 2 kids who got away with it. You know, they did okay with it. Neither of them got desperately ill. Just to remind you then, the rash, first of all, 2 things to point out. One is just look at the difference in terms of how the rash appears on different skin types and colours. Really important that we're mindful of the natural complexion of the child whose skin, or the adult indeed, but the person whose skin we're looking at, because it shows up really clearly as a colour change on pale skin and not nearly so clearly on darker skin. So sometimes it's more about looking for the bumps or even feeling the rash rather than necessarily seeing it. Just to add in one more symptom on this chart, in green there, I've shown something called Koplik spots. Now, they tend to come out somewhere around day 3, 4, 5 of the illness. And if you look top right on this picture, that shows you what they look like. They're inside the wet bit of the lining of the cheek. So looking inside someone's mouth, you might just see these spots. They're not altogether obvious, and on their own, we wouldn't necessarily take them too seriously because it would be easy to get confused with little mouth ulcers or something completely different. But in the context of all the other measles symptoms, the Koplik spots really sort of seal their fate. So they pretty much make us realise that's what it is. So overall, it's very high temperature, runny nose and sneezing, cough and cold type symptoms, red, sore, watery eyes. On the bottom left there, that little child with conjunctivitis-y watery eyes, bilateral watery eyes, the Koplik spots in the mouth, and then obviously the classic rash. So those are all the things to be thinking about. The reason we're alarmed by it and the reason we're trying to spread, not panic, but spread a lot of information about it, is because although Lara and Paul did okay, 20 to 40% of children will require hospitalisation because of their measles. And for some of those, it's just because they get quite dehydrated. You know, little children go off their food and fluids. You know what it's like when they're really hot and bothered, they just can't focus on drinking. So dehydration can be an issue. And sometimes it's fairly straightforward to give them some supportive care and they can head home feeling better. But somewhere around 10 to 20% of them will develop complications which can be really quite serious. So one of the things that measles does is during the illness, your immune system lowers. It really takes a dip, and it means then you can succumb to all sorts of other infections just opportunistically whilst you're unwell with measles. So ear infections, pneumonias, diarrhea, things like that are really common. But you can get much more severe sort of neurological problems. So you can get fits and you can get encephalitis, which, as you'll know, is sort of swelling of the brain, and that can lead to permanent brain injury. But it can also lead to blindness and deafness. Ultimately, you can die of measles, and children do die of it. Also, in terms of pregnancy, it can be a disaster in pregnancy. Unlike rubella, which can cause abnormality in the developing baby so that the baby is born with problems, This doesn't tend to do that, but what it does tend to do is fundamentally put at risk the pregnancy itself. So it can cause miscarriage, premature birth, and stillbirth. So really something very important for pregnant mums to be concerned about. Much more dangerous for little babies. So babies under the age of 12 months are at much more risk of measles, and adults actually. Older people struggle more with measles. The sort of children and adolescent age group tend to shrug it off better and often get away with it better. This is what we're encouraging everyone to do, and this is the message we're spreading through schools and through all other communities. So anything you can do to help spread this message would be fantastic. And we're just pointing out which you'll be well familiar with, I'm sure, but this concept of herd immunity, saying, look, if you've got 100 kids and they're all immune, fantastic, but let's put in the mix one little 4-month-old baby who is too young to have been offered an MMR jab yet, who has no natural immunity whatsoever, and they're only being protected there because they're in a sea of children or a community who are all immunised, and measles can't get in. But as soon as you imagine one child isn't immunised and they've just been away on holiday somewhere where measles is more prevalent and they've brought it home with them, you think, oh, thank goodness, there are lots of children around that can't catch measles because it can't spread to that poor little baby. And we point out to people that 95% is about statistically what we can get away with, and hope that in the community it will not be likely that measles case can make its way to a vulnerable individual. But of course, here in Leicester City, at least, that the MMR numbers in terms of who's had 2 doses of MMR jab for children, it's looking more around the 81% mark, something like that, nowhere near the 95 anyway that we need. And of course, the number's changing all the time, so this is just a snapshot. But we then go on to show the parents that, as soon as you've added in all those extra unimmunised people, your measles case can spread, and then it can spread again. And because of the natural movement of children in a school, for instance, it will eventually spread and potentially get home to the child whose little sibling is 4 months old and who isn't protected and who could become dangerously ill. So most of our message, therefore, obviously, is about vaccination. And that's what we're trying to encourage. So we would love it if you know all the facts, and I'm sure you do, but we're just wanting to reinforce them because we're very conscious that most of the MMR work is being done in general practice. So 2 jabs for measles, mumps and rubella, all included in the vaccine. And it's a live vaccine. So it's a live version of each of those viruses which is given. Obviously, it's been attenuated, so it can't cause illness in people who are healthy, but it's therefore not suitable for the immunosuppressed population. Routinely, we give MMR1 at age 12 months, and that results in 95% protection. MMR2 is given just preschool, sort of age 3 years, 4 months onwards is when they're invited. That lifts it up. Now, some studies say 99% protection, but actually a Cochrane review suggested it was closer to 96%, but it reinforces it anyway and probably gives you slightly better protection overall. There is a porcine-free version of the vaccine called Priorix available. Really important for us that our Muslim communities understand that this is a relatively new thing, I suppose. For many years, they would have been under the impression that this was a vaccine which meant you needed contact with pork gelatin. And we want to get that message out that no, that is no longer the case. There is definitely a vaccine available that has no pork products in it and has never had contact with any pork products in its manufacturing process. Protection is long-standing, so sort of lifelong. Here I am, having had measles as a baby. I will still now have good immunity to measles. It almost always lasts a lifetime, partly because measles is a very stable virus. So unlike COVID, which is mutating all the time, measles is staying still. There are a few different strains, but they all look incredibly similar and they all respond in a very similar way. Measles vaccine was introduced in 1968, which was the year I was born, actually, but it took obviously a few years to roll it out. Here in the UK, our rates of measles illness began to decline steadily, sort of from the 1970s onwards, really. So the younger you are, the less likely it is that you can rely on having had measles as a child in order for you to be protected, and the more dependent you are upon vaccination for that immunity. And obviously for little babies who barely see measles at all, apart from this year, but generally don't see it at all, they're completely dependent upon having their MMR jabs. One change we're going to be seeing over the next year or so is that they're going to include chickenpox, the varicella vaccine, in with the MMR. So it should be an MMRV vaccine, and they're going to change the dates slightly. So it'll be age 12 months and age 18 months that it gets offered. But for now, this is the picture we're looking at. In terms of who's eligible, everyone is. You all are. Any of us that haven't had an MMR jab, even me having had measles as a child and knowing that I have immunity to measles, I'm still eligible for 2 MMR jabs because I haven't necessarily had the protection from the other 2 viruses. It's obviously free of charge. It can be obtained through GPs, and we just need to make sure we route people to make sure they realise they can go and ask for it. It doesn't matter how old they are. We don't offer it in pregnancy because the immune system obviously dips a bit in pregnancy, and some allergy sufferers who are obviously allergic to some excipient within the vaccine can't have it. And as we say, people with immunosuppression can't. The other thing, though, is young babies can't be vaccinated, and that's not because it's harmful. It's more that their immune systems under the age of 6 months really are not going to get any great reaction to this. They're just too immature to work with this particular vaccine. We can vaccinate from 6 months, and in some emergency situations like contact, or if, for instance, a child was about to leave the country and go and stay somewhere where we knew measles was rife, we would consider giving them an early vaccination, but we wouldn't trust it to do the job. And on their return to the UK, once they reach 12 months, they'd be offered their 2 jabs as usual. So an early vaccine doesn't really count, but it can be done. This just shows you Priorix's MMR Vax Pro as well. Side effects wise, really quite a clean side effect profile. Sore arm, tiredness, fever, rash, swollen neck glands. Most people don't get much of those things, but temperature is probably the main thing. Significantly less serious than the symptoms of measles itself. And obviously we're trying to debunk the Andrew Wakefield measles and autism link completely. We're producing some leaflets and literature actually, which we hope, if parents ask the question, will be something that the midwives and other people who are involved with mums with little babies would be able to hand over to help reassure them. But needless to say, we've got lots of research, including the Statens Serum Institute research study, which looked at 650,000 children in Denmark and shows categorically that there is absolutely no change. If children develop autism, there is no proportionate difference whether they've been vaccinated or not vaccinated. It simply doesn't make a difference. So there's absolutely no link. And obviously a study of 650,000 children it blows you away a bit in terms of the statistical significance. Was fantastic. In terms of contact, so if you've been in contact with measles, obviously one of the things, and we have quite a bit of problem with this actually from some communities where they're asked by the UK Health Security Agency to complete some swabs just to check whether or not they develop measles. And actually some families are reluctant to do this and don't really understand why they're being asked to do it. But that's something, if anyone does get asked to do, we're stressing would really help us to monitor the spread of disease and so forth. If you're immunised, you can gloat a little bit because you should, in theory, have lifelong protection. But please spread the word is what we're asking everyone to do. But those people who are not so sure about their immune status, one thing is to consider being vaccinated as an emergency. Within the first couple of days or so after exposure, there is some limited evidence that suggests that can modify the course of disease, potentially even preventing you from getting measles properly at all. But the other thing is, particularly those vulnerable groups, the pregnant, the tiny babies, the immunocompromised, they need to telephone their GP urgently for advice, and specifically telephone. Don't walk in. That's the other big issue, is that when individuals walk into the emergency department or walk into their GP surgery and sit in a waiting area, when later on we realise that actually they did have measles and were infectious, the contact tracing ramifications are just extraordinary. So we're very clearly asking that they please, if they as long as they're not ill and no one's desperately sort of poorly, that phone calls are made in the first instance to make sure that they can be dealt with in an isolated way in a side room and so forth. And then there's this concept of self-isolation whilst harbouring it. Now, Lara and Paul, for instance, we said that it was a 10 to 12 day incubation period. In fact, Mother Nature, likes to have fun and games, and it can be anywhere between about 7 and 18 days. So obviously there's a little bit of a loose cannon going on in terms of, well, when will Paul first show up with signs of his illness? On this chart, it shows it coming out on day 11 as per typical, but actually that day 11 could shift in either direction. And if for instance, if Paul worked in healthcare and he was Lara's, if he was a nurse at the practice where Lara presented with her measles and he had a one-off contact with her on day 1, he would have to then, if he was non-immune himself, isolate away from work from day 5 right through to day 21. So the knock-on impact on businesses and healthcare providers, pharmacies, anywhere else of losing your staff for this period of time, it is incredible. If Paul was a healthcare professional and he lived with Lara, he could, in theory, catch her measles from her anywhere up to day 8. and you'd have to add 21 days onto that. So it's even worse if you live with and are around someone's measles for a while. So in summary, very infectious, anyone can catch it at any age. Vaccination gives lifelong protection in most cases, and you can be routinely vaccinated any age after your first birthday. 2 doses of MMR free of charge on the NHS. If you've missed your doses and you're having catch-up doses, we separate them by 4 weeks. And if you think you have measles, it's call NHS 111 or your GP for advice is what we'd ask you to tell the public to do, not to turn up at the surgery or A&E. Our little roving healthcare unit is bobbing around all over the place offering the MMR vaccine, and that's a walk-in service wherever it is, generally speaking. And people can phone this number or they can scan the barcode and it'll show them a list of where the vehicle's going to be. Often it's doing COVID clinics in the morning and then going to a school to do MMR clinics in the afternoon, for instance. Finally, and really quickly, because I'm conscious of your time, just to mention pertussis, big rise in whooping cough cases this year. So the bar chart on the left shows the first 3 months of this year, massive high numbers compared to all those coloured lines of the other years in recent history. And on the right-hand side, it splits it by age group and shows that during COVID times 21 to 22, complete flatline of pertussis, and it's really soaring and on the increase now. And just to point out that tends to give you a low-grade fever and cough, runny nose, cold symptoms initially, but you don't tend to get the high fever, you don't get a rash. And classically, it's the cough, 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 cough. It's that hoop noise they make as they're desperately trying to get air back in. And exhausted children, very low threshold for admission under the age of 6 months. Again, it's a notifiable disease. Again, it's very infectious. So if possible, in the first instance, a phone call to ask for help. And we're trying to encourage pregnant mums especially to have their pertussis vaccination, which is one you can have and should have during pregnancy for every pregnancy in order to protect their baby in its first few weeks of life. I think that's about it. And thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll stop sharing those slides. Really grateful for your time. And if there's any questions, please fire away.
Thank you, Ginny. That was a fantastic presentation and just very informative and a good reminder of some of the symptoms that you've talked about as well, but just a good reminder of measles and what we might see in community pharmacy when someone's presenting or on behalf of a patient as well. But if there's any questions, if you want to raise your hand, it'd be great if there are any. One thing I was going to ask, Sam, could we get a copy of that leaflet with the scan, with the red one that you've just shown in the because I think that would be quite nice if we could support our colleagues in community pharmacy. We could host that on our website as well, just to know where the mobile van is. Just allows us to keep track of that.
That'd be
Any
fantastic.
questions? Thank you. Any questions? I'm just going to leave it there for a couple of minutes.
The other thing, if I can just introduce,
Yes.
hiding in the background is Ben Smith, one of our other colleagues. Hello, Ben. Do you want to come and say hello?
Mm-hmm.
Ben, those of you that do COVID will know Ben, I'm sure, because he's COVID vaccine man. But if any of you have got questions that he might be able to answer, then please feel free to ask him questions too.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any questions, guys? Raise your hand or.
So everybody's happy.
Yes.
In which case,
Just one-
let me get go on, Ben.
Just one thing I wanted to add from a meeting we had earlier, and it's perhaps something that we can touch on tonight, is we have created, just going back a little bit, on the COVID campaign, there's a website called Grab a Jab, where people could walk into go onto a website and find where they could walk in for a COVID vaccine rather than booking. That became sort of redundant, that website, so we created our own at the beginning of this year. So any sites that are on the call and don't have access to this walk-in immunisation finder, it's obviously, you've got MBS where people can book on, but we've created our own, which is a bit more in depth, where you can put on what times of the day you're actually vaccinating, not just your opening times, what sort of lunch times you're going to be having, so people aren't walking in and having to walk out. So it does cover it in a bit more detail, and you can pop your own system, you can pop your own clinics on there and sort of tailor it to your own needs. So if anybody's interested in having a login created for that site, then please get in touch. I'll pop my email address into the chat and you can email me and I'll create you a login for that site.
I mean, it's basically a free advert, I suppose, but the most important thing is that if people Google vaccines, they end up often heading to our ICB, LLR ICB vaccinations page. And partway down there, there's this banner saying, if you're looking for a COVID walk-in, click here and you can see where they are. That takes them direct to this site. Now, of course, many people will head off to the national site. We absolutely accept that. But as Ben says, this one is more specifically tailored. You can put fussy stuff in about, or Wednesday mornings, please, or only till 4 p.m. or whatever suits your logistics. So, yeah, be great if you'd like it. Go for it.
I think that's a great novel way of doing it as well. And it gives community pharmacies a little bit more autonomy in terms of, like you said, the fussy stuff as well. So if they've got a locum in on a Friday, they know that actually they won't be able to do it on a Friday, so they can blank that one out ultimately and not get walk-ins and then having to refer them on. Just noticed, Ron, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in? Hi, Ron.
Thanks, Rajshri. Good evening. And yeah, really not a question, but a comment more than anything. I missed the first minute of the presentation, so apologies if this has been covered already, but that was just so super helpful in the context of everything that we do as pharmacists. But actually, if I think about the raised level of awareness that we've got at the moment from our patients with regard to the clinical pathways, it feels like more parents, more carers, more everyone is bringing their young children in, thinking that it might be one thing, and actually it turns out to be something different. And if I think about a few of those clinical pathways, there's quite a few, if I just call them kind of lumps and bumps and blotches, in there, and if I give them the proper name, it's impetigo and shingles, etc. But just to know and have that reminder, a really timely reminder of measles and whooping cough as well, and actually what are patients coming in with, maybe even self-diagnosing themselves with, might not necessarily be exactly what's going on as well. So yeah, not a question, but a really big thanks, actually. That was really helpful.
Well, thanks, Ron. And I think one thing I would add on the back of that is that we certainly have a low-grade alarm bell ringing that we don't know about all the cases. We think a lot of them, talking with families, just anecdotally, we think a lot of the cases are just quietly getting on with it in the community. They're not unwell enough that they're being forced to present for help. We think the problem is probably a lot bigger than the UKHSA are aware of. Obviously, it's notifiable. So in theory, every case needs to be notified to them. But we think a lot of families, especially, one child gets it, the rest are just quietly, dosing up, realizing what it is because there's been a case at school, and just not wanting to I don't know if it's not wanting to admit it or not wanting to engage with healthcare. I don't know, but we think there's a lot, and I'm sure pharmacists, you will be that they'll be trying to sneak in and get some paracetamol and so forth and sneak out under the radar. So yeah, anything you can do to try and just to make sure that if it does sound like it might be measles, to raise their level of realization that this is something we do need to know about. We do need to spread the word. We do need to do the swabs. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Any other comments or we've got a few people coming in now just after the presentation, but that's okay. Are there any other comments or questions? I mean, one question I had was just around, I know there's a pilot being done, Sam, in somewhere in London, around community pharmacies potentially administering the vaccination, and it's just recently kind of been launched, hasn't it? So I'm surprised none of our contractors have asked about that, but is there any plans in the pipeline to maybe, pilot that across LLR, or have there been any conversations that you can tell us about involving community pharmacy to support? Because obviously we're supporting in other vaccination areas and done really incredibly well in that, including COVID and flu, etc. And there's obviously other private vaccinations that we do under a private service. But are there any conversations that have happened? Do you know?
No, I mean, we are aware of the pilot taking place in London, but nothing has been shared with us as yet in terms of potential rolling out of that in other areas. But we are watching it just to see what the outcomes are, because it'd be really interesting to see what the uptake's like, because I've been quite aware that community pharmacies are really representative of their local communities, and it's a generational business generally as well, isn't it? It's handed down through the family, so there's a lot of relationships there with customers. So it'd be really interesting to see what the impact is like.
Brilliant.
But Ginny, have you heard anything through your network about?
No, so I think the comment I would make is that at the moment we're in this extraordinary time where NHS England are delegating the, if you like, commissioning and responsibility for all immunisations to us as an ICB. So whereas at the moment NHS England decide who has the contract and where the work goes and what goes on, soon that will be our responsibility locally to work out, well, what suits the people of LLR, what's going to get vaccination rates up and so forth. So it's going to take, I'm sure, a few years to evolve into something new. But it is an exciting time when there's a lot of uncertainty. So I don't think anything is ruled out or ruled in. It would be fantastic to see what the results of this pilot are down in London, and to see what the benefits, there might be disadvantages we don't know about. We just don't know. It'd be lovely to see. And I think up in Scotland, because obviously healthcare is delegated anyway up there already. So they decided to take away childhood immunisations fundamentally from GPs, and instead to take responsibility as effectively as ICBs, I suppose. They've just got it slightly differently up there, but that's what they've done. So they've organised it that way. And no, I mean we've got lots of interesting, exciting, innovative ideas at the moment, and we just need to wait and see what some of the results of these things are to decide on a direction of travel.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to come in? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything more official than Virginia has said, and certainly that's exactly my opinion as well. But I think I would be surprised in 3 years if there wasn't some form of pilot around childhood immunisations being delivered in some community pharmacies in some areas, and I would be surprised in 5 years if it wasn't a service that was available to all to offer. Probably is my suspected take on the National Direction of Travel. That's my take on it. I've not heard anything inside track on that, but I think that's possibly the way it would go. But what I'd encourage pharmacy contracts to do is to make the most of the existing services that are available in the pharmacy contract to demonstrate community pharmacies' strength, resilience around access and delivery. But I think make a success of what's already on offer, then more opportunities will come.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Ginny and Sam and Ben. If there's not, are there any last minute comments or questions? I know we've gone over time, but I think it's time well spent, to be fair. And I think it's a fantastic presentation. And Ginny or Sam, if you can share that with us, and you're happy for us to share that with our colleagues, and are you okay if we share it on our website as well, which they can access? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant, thank you. I think somebody's just got their hand up and I can't see.
Crunel,
come on in, Crunel.
Sorry, just wanted to let you, it was a brilliant presentation. It was very informative. Just wanted to tell you about this, low vaccine uptake as well, especially in specific demographics, because it's just a side effect of the COVID as well. A lot of resentment around COVID vaccines and the side effects, and that is putting a lot of young parents off from having the overall vaccines. We have got a brilliant childhood vaccination program, but I've just recently had to literally ask young parents to rethink, because they were proudly telling me that, oh, they've made a joint decision not to give any kind of vaccines to the newborn. And then this is kind of thing, it's bubbling up. So yes, this kind of information and anything probably will help them. So just keep on doing, and it makes us, it gives us a tool as well to give them the right information as well. So thank you. But it is just because of this COVID and all this, that's why.
Yeah, and I really agree that COVID has had a huge and negative impact overall on people's sort of attitudes towards vaccination. Although I must say the downward trend in childhood immunisation was well established before COVID, actually. So we were already heading down, and it's been over the last decade that numbers have been reducing, and COVID just, as you say, I mean, it gave a platform, didn't it, for people to spread misinformation and fear, and there was a lot of speculation, a lot of conjecture, and lots of people lost faith and confidence in vaccines. And our childhood vaccination program previously, world leading and fantastic and well respected. So it's very sad that the damage has been done, but we're absolutely determined to turn that round, and lots of plans to sort of get into schools, do assemblies, educate educate the next generation of future parents, and our comms team are doing a lot of work with social media, trying to make sure that the right message keeps getting across. But I think you guys are incredibly important in that. You're in exactly the right place, and whenever you hear those people talking nonsense, you're the ones that can say, well, hang on a minute, actually. So brilliant that you're already doing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Crinell. And if there are any additional resources, Sam or Ginny or Ben, that you think that we would benefit from, please do send them over, and we can, we can host all of that information on our website, so our contractors and pharmacists can access that at their fingertips when they're having patients present to them as well. Sam, you've got your hand up.
Oh, sorry to come back in, because I know you need to move. You need to move on. I was just going to say, yes, there are some materials that have been translated into other languages, leaflets, posters, etc. So I'll put my name in the chat. So if anybody thinks they need something in a particular language, if you get in touch with me, I'll more than happy to help you obtain those materials. Likewise, if you have any ideas about how we can improve the MMR offer locally, I mean, as Ginny mentioned, we're going into some schools and participating in assemblies. We've been doing webinars with parents. If you have any ideas of what we can do, please do share them with us. We're more than happy to see if we can put some of those ideas into reality. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Sam. That's really helpful as well. And just in terms of asking our colleague, community pharmacy for feedback as well. So I'm sure I'll get some ideas collated. So if you do have any, feel free to forward them on, and I'll pass them collectively to Sam and the team as well. Any more last minute questions, comments from anyone? Nope. Well, I just want to say generally a thank you so much. It's been incredibly informative. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just want to say thank you so much for spending the evening with us as well. And I know our colleagues who haven't been able to join us will find the slides and the presentation when they watch it back incredibly helpful as well. So thanks, Ben, thanks, Sam, and thanks, Ginny. And feel free to keep, you can stay on if you want to listen to what's going on in community pharmacy, but obviously if you need to get on, we totally understand as well. But generally, thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope to see you again.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Great, guys. So I'm just going to share my screen. Paul, can I come to you, actually, if that's okay? I think you were the next person on the agenda, to be fair.
I am.
It's just a verbal update. Is there a verbal update or anything like that?
I've got a couple of things, a couple of positive stories I wanted to share, if that's
Of
okay.
course. Yes.
But yeah, quite a short update, and I'll keep it quite. I will keep it quite brief, because it's some really powerful message. She's a great presenter, isn't she? Which is and I just think, Crinell, great for you to chip in actually about your comment, because people forget that it's a slogan from CP, isn't it? But pharmacy at the heart of our communities, and with, I think, the increasing number of independents and small groups of people really embedded, great opportunity to engage with patients, and it's so hard, I suppose, when we're all looking at financials and performance and things like that, we forget about that narrative. And I think that was really strong for you to come into Crinell. So thank you for speaking up there. Right, really quickly, just wanted to mention great success there about pharmacy contractors in LLR on the DMS, making DMS claims. So see real step change there in the autumn. They chose lag 3 months behind, so I have no idea how we're doing at the moment. But we're continuing to fly the flag within UHL and their sort of junior pharmacist teams around the making sure that referrals happen, and we can see the growth there really led strongly. I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, but do make sure you've got really strong DMS protocols in place to pick up those referrals and action them in a timely manner. Really beneficial for patients. So for every 10 you do, you'll prevent 1 readmission. So for those pharmacists that did 40 in January, you prevented 4 hospital admissions by your hard work. So thank you very much. Do keep going. If any locums on here as well, do go into branches, look for those referrals, and challenge pharmacists where you think that their perhaps protocols could be improved. But really strong performance there. And then I thought I'd just share with you how we're doing around contraception.
Oh, you froze there for a short while there, Paul.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
But anyway, you got the gist of it. You're doing well. Keep it the hard work. Conception, again, rather lag on the data, unfortunately. But you can see on the left-hand graph there in the bars, a number of consultations in LLR. It's good growth. I haven't benchmarked us against other systems, but I suspect we're second in the Midlands compared to Staffordshire, possibly B-Cell sometimes pips us at things, sometimes not. And the number of pharmacies increased to who actually performed a consultation in January up to 35. So it's really pleasing to see that step change, that really steep climb. So long may it continue. If you've signed up to deliver it and you're in place, but you're feeling a little bit nervous about delivering it, do contact myself or LPC service support colleagues, or put it even on some of the WhatsApp groups. You know, someone you want to run something by, you know, absolutely, we're happy to come and support you to get going. Once you've done quite a few, it tends, you know, EHC many years ago, when I was a wee young pharmacy manager, was new. We were all nervous about providing it, and suddenly I'd done 50, and it was really just normal business as usual. And Conception, it goes that way as well. So on the right hand side there, we can see number of pharmacies. So on the right hand side graph, on the left hand side of that, number of pharmacies registered. So it's around about 150 pharmacies in LR registered for the service. And then in January, so it's around about 25% of those registered are performed a consultation. It'd be really great to get that up a little bit higher. So if you have registered but you've not thrown your hat into the ring yet, you know, look for some opportunities. Again, myself, service support colleagues and LPC can try to support with you identifying patients, working with GP teams as well, because there are some opportunities for them within it. So that was a bit about performance, Conception, DMS. What I do want to touch on the very time-consuming multi-factor authentication issues around farm outcomes that some of your surgeries may be experiencing. So as you will be aware, as many of you farm outcomes users, that farm outcomes added multi-factor authentication to their platforms in March with no warning, or 24 hours warning or something like that. And although the initial impact was with yourselves, you know, on it, recognise the importance of understanding how to make it work, and we know you all can make it work, which is great. Our GP practice colleagues are struggling to get to embed multi-factor authentication in their farm refer side of things. So we have done a lot of work with key partners over the last couple of weeks to get a guide and a workable solution out to practices around desktop authenticator use. It is clunky, it's not perfect. To be honest, they're still moaning at me. I won't lie to you. It's probably not a perfect solution, and there's probably a better one out there. So we're going to continue to working with the IT colleagues, both farm outcomes and the NHS, to get a workable solution in place for practices. It does work, the solution. If practices are committed to making it work, it will work. But it does require quite a significant amount of initiation energy from them. It's really unfortunate. If you're in an area where practices were using Farm Refer for Pharmacy First and are no longer, you know, get in touch with myself so we can sort of follow those practices, support them moving back on. We are still committed to Farm Refer as a platform. We think it is truth. It's better for everybody. It's easy for yourself. You get that information directly in. It's much more visible than an email. It's better for the practices. We get better data at the system. So it's a win-win-win really. Apart from it's just a bit fiddly now at the practice side, and that has caused some despondency. Those of you who've got great relationships, do keep talking about Farm Refer. Signpost them to myself and Mel if they're struggling to get it working. Or absolutely, we are committed and are investing a significant amount of time in getting it working in individual practices. So do, but you know, keep mentioning Farm Refer if you're having discussions with practices and they're not using it, or if they say to you, if they moan to you, you know, I'll be honest, it isn't great, it ain't perfect, you know, but let me know, feed it back to me so I can do chase up with them and try to get it resolving. A related note around Pharmacy First is that we are hoping that UHL Emergency Department will start signposting people for the 7 clinical pathways to community pharmacies over the next couple of weeks, hopefully. we have got in place a leaflet, and I'm just going to share that on my screen now that you may see. Now, let me just bring that up. So I've got so many windows open. Because where is it gone? So first ED leaflet. Sorry, it is coming. It is coming. Let me just share my window. Right. So it isn't a finalised leaflet, so you may see some. There may be some work to be done on it. Okay. It is a pilot and a trial. It doesn't include the wider selection of minor illnesses available through Pharmacy First, because in truth, the ED department are not ready to log into a referral platform and send you a formal referral. So if they send people, they'll signpost and you won't get paid for it. That's why it's not included. That is a step too far. It's unfortunate. And I'm hoping that once we can demonstrate the benefit of signposting for the 7 clinical pathways, obviously that will be a walk-in patient for yourselves, then that will be a launch pad for them, hopefully engaging in a referral platform. It is unfortunately a step too far. It's quite a busy front desk where we expect it to happen. The idea is that they will a clinician will quickly assess a patient, realise that they are Pharmacy First suitable, tick the leaflet, hand it to the patient, then the patient will then present to a pharmacy, which may be one of the pharmacies near the hospital emergency department, and we've listed them there by distance, which was the fairest way we felt we could do it. But obviously they could present to any pharmacy, and that we have promoted the fact that the choice of any pharmacy further up the form than local pharmacies. It's a pilot, it's a trial. We'll see when to get the results coded at the emergency department. They are quite keen. And certainly I sat in that front desk for a short period of time, and there was a significant footfall of people who didn't need to be there. So I've also, in order to collect some data, there's a QR code in the box. So if you see one of these forms presented in your pharmacy with patient, if you could take, and I haven't any money to reward you other than your goodwill, is to take 2 minutes to scan the QR code at the bottom and complete the 5 questions on the form, just to give us some feedback and evaluation, particularly about where patients are going as their destination, and did they meet the gateway criteria, and did you supply? It's basically what it asks about who you are. Did they meet the gateway criteria? Did you supply something, and what was the condition? But we don't know. I appreciate I'm asking you to go above and beyond with giving that feedback. But if you can, it will scan on a mobile device, so you can just scan it. We work through the 4 questions. It should take about 30 seconds. It will give us really valuable information to try and move the ED department into more formal referrals, and then that wouldn't be needed because all the data will be there. So if you start to see these, send formal to go. It's probably a couple of weeks off yet. There might be some minor tweaks to the form, but the general gist is there. And on the back there'll be basically a bit of information about Pharmacy First. Borrowed from the NHS website, and because interestingly, there's not actually a patient information leaflet out there about Pharmacy First that I felt was appropriate. So that's pretty much it. Final plea, and I'll hand back to Raj because time's getting on. Just around the stop smoking service, if you're registered and you can't provide it, please deregister. Let me know. As ongoing managing UHL tobacco teams' expectations around the service is quite challenging. I won't lie to you. It's really helpful when they do send referrals to pharmacies on lists that they can process them, and very unhelpful when you can't, in truth. We are getting referrals hopefully starting to come through from LPT, which would increase volume for those of you who are able to offer the service. That's it for me. You know where we are. A couple of people on this call I've got outstanding emails from to respond to. I've had a torrid week, including my car breaking down this afternoon, so I am quite behind, but Shoaib, you are on my list to reply. I will get to you soon, and I think there's one other person on the call as well, but do drop me a line. Things aren't working right, we don't know, we can't solve them. Let us know. We can try and work together, obviously with Rajshri and her team, directly with yourselves, NHS England and the DOS team. We can try and put everyone together to work in the same direction to get it working for patients and yourselves. That's it. I'll hand it back to you, Rajshri.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from any of our contractors that are still on the call with regards to any of the content that Paul's gone through? raise your hand or just speak up, because there's not many of you on the call. No? Okay. Thank you, Paul. That's really great. And I think LPT went live on the 1st of April, wasn't it? 1st of April, 1st of May. Can't remember.
Hopefully, but I think she's away, isn't she? So she's not.
Yes.
I've not had any contact from her about whether it's worked or not.
No.
Whether she has actually gone back. We'll chase it up next week.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much. Right, guys, so I'm conscious it's gone past 9, so I'm going to be really quick with my slides. I'm going to jump ahead. Just a couple of things, and I'll share the slides, of course, which will be hosted on the website, including the other presentations that you've had from today as well. We'll get Kate to get them on, and the recording as well, quite quickly. Just a couple of things to inform our contractors or pharmacists that have joined us from LLR. So there's a contractor database that myself as LPC, Chief Officer, and my team obviously hold, and it includes information about each of your pharmacies, including ODS codes, contact names, email addresses, and also information about the advanced services that you're delivering. So at the moment, myself and the team are going through the rigmarole of ringing every single pharmacy, so all 232 of you, to ensure the information is accurate and up to date. So it's a conversation either with myself, Gareth, Kate, Vin, one of our team, and like I said, it takes 1 minute, so please do help us to complete that over the next coming weeks as well. And it's essential we do this exercise because it allows us to understand exactly what our contractors are doing, but also what your needs are as well going forward. So if you do get a call from us, you'll know why, and if you can just let your team members know as well, appreciate it's often not yourselves that are answering the phone first as well. That would be great. Couple of things just to remind you, last week CPE announced the pharmacy advice audit. So if you've missed that, I'm just going to quickly run you through that. So that starts on the 3rd of June, and the audit will be asking pharmacy owners and their teams to help Community Pharmacy England measure the increasing number of people relying on pharmacies. I've added the link there, so there's the CPE have dedicated a web page to this, so there's lots of more information about the advice audit. And the advice audit is really about following on from the launch of Pharmacy First. And if you were on the call last week with CPE's webinar looking at pressures and workforce, etc., that Janet and Alistair and the team were on, you might have heard Janet speak about this halo effect, which basically is alluding to the fact that there's more patients accessing community pharmacy as a result of Pharmacy First, and they're really intrigued to find out exactly why patients are doing that, and when a patient actually accesses the pharmacy, if they fall outside of the funded service. And that allows CPE to provide a more accurate picture back to their negotiations and also DHSC and government as well. So that's going to start on the 3rd of June, and you'll be asked as contractors, or each pharmacy will be asked to record data about patients seeking informal advice outside the Pharmacy First scope over the course of any single day over a 2-week period. So that will commence from the 3rd of June. So just ring fence that in your diaries. We will obviously include that into our tracker as well, our deadline tracker that we circulate on a monthly basis. Just a couple of insights that I wanted to share with you, completely different now, which was I attended this month the local intelligence meeting for controlled drugs, which is in tandem with Northampton, and there was a couple of themes around controlled drugs, particularly around methadone dispensing as well. And I just want to share with you, so I'm not going to go into solution, and I'm just going to tell you what the themes were. So there were common themes that were emerging. One was there seems to be an increase in mixing up of methadone and methadone sugar-free. So just to be vigilant, and this is just to kind of give you more information around that. So it's not going to go into solutions of what you can do, but I just wanted to highlight that as a common theme that was discussed. The other thing was just around spillages. So obviously that has an impact on your balance, but spillages and the aftermath of what needs to be done and why. So make sure you've obviously you and your teams are obviously adhering to your SOPs as well. And that kind of brings me on to the next point around balances. So we discussed at length balances not being done by a number of contractors as well. So and that was not being followed in your SOPs. So just make sure that you are adhering to that, and obviously know what you or how often you should be doing your balances, more importantly. And then the interesting thing was there was a report that more prescriptions are getting lost, actually not in community pharmacy, but by the patient themselves. So where the drug and alcohol team have handed over the prescription to the patient, and the patient's obviously come into the pharmacy, prescriptions have been lost. We also talked about some prescriptions getting lost through Royal Mail as well, and provisions or parameters to put in place to mitigate that. So I just wanted to give you a quick synopsis of the common themes that are emerging from that meeting, but just to be vigilant and be aware of that so that you can take that back into your pharmacies. A couple of more things was just I need your support. Now you'll if you are on the contractor WhatsApp group, you'll notice that on a Monday I always request your intelligence around out of stocks. And this is really, really important. The reason why I ask you is on a Monday, every Monday, I have a call with Paul, but also with colleagues across ICB and the system, including UHL and LPT. And one of the standing item agendas is actually looking at out of stocks. So this is where I really need your ear to the ground, your intelligence to feed back to me, so I can then feed that back to the likes of Jill within ICB, who is the conduit between us and GP practice world, really. So we can obviously get that cascaded to them. So I know that sometimes I've seen the chat, why are doctors still prescribing this? It's been it's been out of stock for so many months. Well, we need to make sure that we're feeding that back directly to some of our stakeholders as well, so they can obviously support that message as well on a wider scale. So I'm just asking for your support. If you can just let me know some of the out of stocks when I put those requests on, that would be fantastic. A couple of other reminders was just around the LLR teaching forums. I think I've mentioned this a couple of open house surgeries ago, which was just around the teaching forum. So this is also available for community pharmacists and their teams to join. If you scan that QR code, which is also on our website, it allows you to access the upcoming sessions that are available, various topics. Paul's presented, but it's not just about community pharmacy. We get presenters from LPT, ICB, LPT, talking about a lot of different things, which could also support your CPD as well. So worth joining if you do have the time to do that, and it's over lunch as well. And the final thing for me, and apologise, it's really, really whistle stop, is just save the date for the AGM. The AGM for Community Pharmacy Leicester and Rutland will be happening on the 24th of September. So again, if you can ring fence that date, it is a virtual event, so it won't be face-to-face this year. We've held face-to-face for the past 2-3 years, but this year we've decided to hold it virtually. So if you can just ring fence that date, that would be great. That's it from me. I'm just conscious of time. It's nearly 9 minutes past 9. If there are any questions or comments, feel free. I'll stay on. But I just want to, extend my thanks for you to join us this evening. So are there any questions or any comments? No? Just go to the chat. No, okay. Well, again, thank you ever so much for joining us. If you have any questions about any of the content that we've gone through this evening, do feel free to reach out to myself or to any of the colleagues that have spoken today as well. I think they've shared their contact details in the chat. But thank you again for taking the time out of your evening, and hope to see you next time as well. So it happens on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Hey, do you want to stop recording as well?
Yeah.
And I'll just stop sharing.